everyone. This is a podcast about application of behavioral science to public policy. My name is Saltanat Janyanova. I'm a lecturer in Public Policy School for Policy Studies, the University of Bristol. And today we have special guests from Behavioural Insights Team, which is a global leading social organization in behavioral analysis for the public sector. We have Sebastian Salomon Balada, Principal Advisor of International Programs of BIT, and Adelaida Barrera Daza, Senior Policy Analyst of BIT. Thank you for coming today. Sebastian, I can start with you. Please tell us about the Behavioural Insights team. What is your team doing? How it has emerged and developed? Maybe in what regions are you working?
Thank you, Saltanat. It is a pleasure to be here in Astana and a privilege at Nazarbayev University. The Behavioural Insights Team is a global research and innovation consultancy. We were born out of the UK government in 2010 as the original nudge unit, one of the first teams across the world to apply a deep understanding of human behavior to try and design solutions to public and social challenges that work better for people. Since then, we've become an independent organization focused on social good across the world. We've been working on international projects since 2014. And we work in close partnership with public, social, and private sector organizations that seek to achieve a better understanding of people's behavior and to apply this evidence base of human behavior and of what really happens in the real world to design programs, policies, initiatives that work better for people.
Thank you, Sebastian. Really, in Kazakhstan, we read a lot about BIT practices, and we are really excited that BIT has traveled a long distance to come to Kazakhstan and wider Central Asia region. Ada, can you please share with us some examples of behavioral nudges? What have been the outcomes? What have been the results of these nudges?
Of course, happy to, Saltanat. So first I would say that an interesting aspect of behavioral public policy is that it is a lens that is quite cross-cutting. So you can apply it to pretty much whichever policy area or policy issue, because ultimately all government and public efforts are related to human behavior. So we have works across education, health, economic policy, and so on. A couple of things that come to mind as like unicorns or like really great examples of our work include the early work done by BIT on pension enrollment. So what we did there was change the default so that instead of asking people to actively enroll in a pension scheme, they would be auto-enrolled or enrolled automatically, and they could opt out of that. Major effects that led to an increase of over 60% of people now enrolling in pensions in the UK. Another area with like really good results has to do with tax revenues. So we tweaked and designed the letters and emails asking people to pay their taxes with a behavioral perspective, including like a social norms element to that. And that in the UK led to an increase of an additional £200 million in revenue, which is not negligible at all. We replicated something similar in low and middle income countries, including Indonesia, where the problem there or the objective there was not only revenue, but also to bring the payments by people earlier in the game. So we managed to get 130,000 tax files submitted earlier than 2 weeks before the deadline. So those are like classic examples. Obviously, time has passed and we have evolved into more nuanced and sophisticated ways of nudging. Examples that come to mind recently in low and middle income countries include our recent work in vaccination, where Sebastian and I were working in Argentina, creating a chatbot. So we went from like early, letters to like modern day or more contemporary ways of communicating via WhatsApp. We designed a two-way interaction system to increase the uptake of vaccines on COVID boosters as well as influenza vaccines in 2 provinces in Argentina, leading to between a 3-fold and 4-fold increase in uptake compared to a control group. Beyond that, in even more complex policy areas, we have reduced 30% of dropouts by victims or survivors of domestic abuse in Chile who simply dropped out of criminal proceedings because they were taking too long to hear back from their solicitors, by including timely nudges along the way, including updates and no updates. So whenever there was nothing to communicate, we would actively tell people we're still on your case, but no answer yet from the judges. And that led to 12% or 12 percentage points or 30% decrease in dropouts by victims. But yes, lots more to share across all policy areas in like around 2,000 projects we've done.
So I understand that this is your first visit, the first visit of BAT, not only to Kazakhstan, but also wider Central Asia region. So what is the purpose of your visit, Sebastian?
We are extremely pleased to be here at the invitation of the National Analytical Center, with whom we've been in close discussions for about a year now, as we've supported the setup and now are here for the launch of their Center for Public Administration and Behavioral Policy for Central Asia, which we are extremely encouraged by and has the potential to be a leading beacon in the application of behavioral evidence to policy making across the Central Asian region. National Analytical Center is a think tank within Nazarbayev University, which is where we're at today. And they are a leading institution in considering the use of different evidence and different leading innovations and betterment of public policies. They have, for example, a leading survey center that works with partners such as the World Bank and other institutional global actors.
This is really exciting. And from my side, let me share very briefly some examples on Kazakhstani nudges. For example, although in Kazakhstan we don't have accepted terminology of behavioral science, we don't call it nudges explicitly, but government bodies are experimenting with behavioral nudges. For example, they send citizens receive SMS reminders on tax collection, on fines, health screenings. There is active anti-corruption messaging campaign, etc. So if Sebastian, question to you, if you were to persuade a Kazakhstani politician in terms of behavioral insights benefits for the Kazakh government, what would be your answer?
Thank you. What a wonderful question. And it's well suited because behavioral science has a lot to contribute, even as a value add. It's not surprising that the Kazakhstani government is already taking a behavioral lens to challenge, because at the end of the day, every public policy or program is trying to get someone to do more of something or less of something else. And having this as a systematized, purposeful approach can have an even added value into these efforts. First of all, through promoting more effective and efficient public services, both in the take-up of programs as we try and get people to access them and bridge this gap that often exists between people's intention to do something and their actual action and behavior of doing it, as well as in the design of these services themselves, such that they work in ways that are more conducive to action and are less onerous on the effort that's required from people to participate in them. In this way, in short, we can reach better outcomes at a higher degree of cost efficiency. The behavioral lens can also enhance policy making and governance itself by moving from assumptions about human behavior to real knowledge about how people act and behave. And this can even happen in the legislative process. For example, in the UK, we were proud to work as part of the sugar taxation efforts, leading to a reduction of 11% in the sugary content of drinks, even before the legislation was passed, by promoting action on behalf of producers in lowering the amount of sugar in their drinks. Lastly, a behavioral approach can contribute to a culture of innovation and learning by promoting a culture of iteration and experimentation, where we not only do the initiative, but then we learn from it, and we take that learning and we embed it into the next time we try and design something. This culture of testing and learning is a cornerstone of the behavioral approach, and it can mean that next year's tax collection SMS can be even more effective than the prior years, and so on and so on and so on. Where every chance you have a touch point of interaction with a community or with individuals, it's also an opportunity for learning how to improve that communication. Every instance of service delivery gives you feedback and data on how to improve it. This also fosters a culture of cross-sectoral collaboration and learning, where experts from education, experts from health, from many other sectors can come in and share their learned experiences on behavior, because while behavior is highly context dependent, within those contexts, it's likely that people trying to promote access to an educational benefit face the same challenges as those promoting a health benefit. The specific contextual barriers will change, but the way in which our cognition addresses those challenges is usually relatively stable. It's important for us to always test and ensure that things replicate accordingly, and to be purposeful with this. And if we take that gamble, if we do that extra effort, we can see these added dividends in more effective and efficient public services, in better governance, and in learning and innovation throughout the governance as well.
Thank you, Sebastian. All of the issues that you have just highlighted are very timely and actual for the public sector in Kazakhstan, such as interdisciplinary, cross-organizational collaboration, the issue of using more robust evidence for decision making. So coming to the evidence, Ada, what type of methodological tools BIT is using? Can you please briefly outline this?
Yeah, of course. I think a way to see the way we share this approach with the world is not thinking about advising others what to do, but sharing good practices and how to conduct projects with a behavioral lens. So methodology is really at the core of our message and of what we want to share with others. So there's two ways to think about this, or two key moments where methods matter a lot. One of them would be at the stage of exploratory research. This is usually done in a quite expert manner by researchers like yourselves at NAC, faculty at universities, and to some extent in policymaking as well. We take this very seriously. We do not want to simply apply bluntly the interventions that have worked in one context to another, especially when we have this imbalance or differences across populations between the populations where these tools have been tested in high-income countries, Western industrialized countries, and what we can call the global south or low and middle income countries. There's vast differences. I personally come from South America, so I totally understand this kind of like gap. So we really want to focus our exploratory research before designing interventions to very seriously consider the cultural norms, the social circumstances, the nuances of these behaviors we want to encourage or discourage in their context from the perspective of the participants or end users themselves, so that it's not like a top-down intervention, but rather like a co-creation taking the context into consideration. So this includes methods like primary qualitative research, including interviews with a behavioral lens, focus groups with a behavioral lens, incognito participation and observation of services and practices in action. So that's one thing. And then the second moment where methods are particularly important is at the stage of evaluation or trial. And we can call this as well measurement or assessment, not of the performance of the policymakers or government officials. That's definitely not what we mean here. It's more about testing and trying out different options, different ideas of what might work, so that we can rigorously assess which works better. So which of those fantastic ideas that government might have are worth investing more than in others. And for this purpose, I would say the behavioral policy approach has worked in other contexts, such as the US and the UK, as a sort of Trojan horse, if you want to call it like that, to really be a vessel or a transportation means from academia and science into the policymaking world on how to create, evaluate, and replicate an evidence base. So really producing good quality experiments, quasi-experiments, pre and post evaluation, theory-based evaluation, so that we have good enough reason to decide which of our great ideas or reasonably good ideas are worth taking forward.
Thank you, Ada, for your comprehensive feedback. So there is an active debate among academics and practitioners, as you know well, regarding some challenges related with application of behavioral science in the public sector. And I can see from our brief discussion that one of the biggest challenges for Kazakhstan would be application of methodology in terms of introducing more scientific approach to evidence-based policy making. So in your view, what are the potential challenges we need to be prepared for?
So let me start with a positive here and say that expertise and capabilities are definitely not a barrier. There are some brilliant social scientists and academics, both here at the National Analytical Center and more broadly, that have a lot to bring to the table in this lens. I think the main barrier is more in the adoption of these capabilities and this expertise. And a big barrier in that is simply what we call the status quo bias. And the way in which we've done things is the way in which we've done things is the way in which we do things, the way in which we do things. And having a bit of a different mindset in that approach, I think, is a big barrier. The best way to overcome it, I think, is through case studies of success, of where behavioral insights have been applied and have shown to increase outcomes for people, for government, and throughout. And in order for us to have these case studies, we need to know whether it works or not. And this brings with it, like Adelaida was saying, this culture of testing and learning and innovation. There is often a perception of nudges of being soft or perhaps trivial. They don't always come with vast reform on a subject. This is partly true, but a benefit in itself because it is so cost effective and so light touch. But B, and more importantly, behavioral science has a lot more to say beyond just nudging. Applying behavioral science as a lens can allow us to see the broader system of behaviors and contextual factors and their interplay. And so that barrier as well of moving beyond behavior as nudging and thinking about behavior as systems can be a really important one to bring to the table. It requires with it some degree of operational transparency in being able to, lift the hood and look at the engine and see the different parts that are working, which can partly be a barrier, but also can be a benefit because it feeds back data loops that allow us to understand better the way in which people are behaving and the way in which our policies and our programs are guiding those behaviors. Lastly, I would say scaling can be a challenge as well. Once we found something works, moving from a pilot to a policy can be a big challenge, and it requires a long bet. There are some quick wins that behavioral science can contribute, but in order to get to this higher level of change, we need to have a degree, a longer term horizon in looking at our thinking. When the Behavioural Insights Team was first established within the UK government, we had a sunset clause that meant we had to achieve a certain degree of outcomes in order to justify our continued existence within the first few years. And had that been a few months instead of a few years, we simply wouldn't be here today. And thankfully, there has been globally a bet on behavioral science. We've gone from a few units existing around the world in 2010 to more than 630 around the world now, of which the Center for Public Administration and Behavioral Policy for Central Asia here at the National Analytical Center is the latest one. And it's something we can be proud of and should be a catalyst for this continued long-term investment, which requires sustained funding and sustained political will, which can be sometimes a barrier, but once overcome, give us this groundwork to be able to contribute to society through this long-standing commitment to behavior and to evidence.
Thank you, Sebastian. By the way, I have read the book by David Halpern, Inside the Nudge Unit, where he reflected on the experience of the first BIT team, and that was a really inspiring story. And I think that there is a growing understanding within the government, Kazakhstani government, in terms of that there is a need to understand better and deeper the needs, the behavior, the social norms, both of the public, but also of the government officials. Yeah, and I think this is a great momentum that BIT is here today in Astana, in Kazakhstan, and working closely with the National Analytical Center. And through NATS, you will be able to work with key stakeholders in the government. I would like to wish BIT and Kazakhstani stakeholders good luck in your endeavor and all the best. Enjoy Astana, enjoy Kazakhstani cuisine, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.